When the federal government does a massive crypto takedown, they have a rather large, unique problem. And that's finding passcodes, passphrases, digital wallets within, if not petabytes of data, terabytes worth of data. And that leads us to today's guest. Lili Infante spent 11 years in the DEA's office. She specialized in digital assets. She has since moved into the private sector where she has started Cat Labs. We talk about her emigration from Russia, her time in the DEA's office, moving into the private sector, but we start with a rather unique opportunity she had speaking with U.S. Secretary Scott Bessent. Please enjoy this conversation with Lili Infante. Lili, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
It's good to see you. We had uh an agenda that I think we're going to upend a little bit because I saw your post to LinkedIn about you meeting with Secretary Bessent.
Yeah.
All right, let's throw away the agenda. Let's go right to that. Like how did that? I knew you were dialed into government and what you're doing, but can you give me a little bit of a breakdown of what happened and how you got to do that?
Yeah. So the crazy thing right now is I feel like my life's work has literally been waiting for this moment in history with everything that's going on with the new administration's initiatives around cryptocurrency, first of all, fostering innovation in cryptocurrency in the digital asset space in general, and also uh, setting up the digital asset stockpile and, the Bitcoin reserve, using seized assets to fund that reserve, which I think is a great idea if implemented properly, of course. And also being tough on crime, being tough on cartels, being tough on terrorism, being tough on national security threats. I mean, all of that stuff, everything in the current administration's agenda I've been basically working on for the past 10 years and fighting for. And I'm really, really happy to see what's going on. I mean, of course, not everything, but a lot of the things that are happening in the crypto space and the way that the current administration is handling cryptography and innovation in the space. I'm really happy to see it. I'm really happy to see the crackdown on the crime and transnational organized crime. And crypto has become one of the biggest enablers of transnational crime because it allows a lot of these big organizations to scale because they can transfer value across borders quickly and efficiently. And so the reason I met with Secretary Bessent is he was meeting with small businesses that were building innovative technology. And so I ended up scoring a meeting with him, which was awesome. And I
Al,
spoke to him.
you're a small business. You're a small business owner. You're an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
We just celebrated International Women's Day. I think you
yeah.
were born and raised, or born in Russia. You came to the United States, years ago. How'd you land that?
I don't reveal my sources.
All right.
you know,
Sounds
but
good.
it's the thing because of the work that we're doing, really, because the work we're doing is so relevant to what's going on with the current administration and a lot of the initiatives that it's the word gets around, right? There's some people that know some people that know some people that have heard of what we're doing, and it's kind of very much aligned with the initiatives that this administration is putting forward. And Secretary Bessent, and he's very much for small business. I think one of the things that the current administration is trying to do is foster the growth of small business and the growth of just in general private sector. While they're kind of slashing the government spending and the waste, fraud, and abuse, they're trying to lift up the small businesses, lift up the commercial sector, the private sector, because that's really the backbone of America, right? And so that's one of the things. Secretary Bessent is really
Let's call
really
him
bullish on
Scott.
small
Let's call him
business.
Scott. Let's go.
He's very bullish on business.
Yeah.
He's very, one of his main objectives, and when we spoke, is to reduce the deficit, of course, and also to reduce the waste, wasteful spending in the government as well.
How many people were at this roundtable?
We probably had about 10 people. Uh, his um his policy director was there, his assistant was there, chief of staff was there, and a couple of other small business owners as well.
So it wasn't just digital assets and crypto and related technologies. It was a little bit of everything.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But the digital assets conversation is very top of mind for everybody right now.
No doubt.
And I think what I was trying to get away from the conversation, and also as because I have a little bit of a unique perspective, because not only am I in the private sector, have a tech business that is servicing the government. The government is one of our biggest kind of target demographics, or target clients. But I'm also a former special agent, right? I've been on the inside. I understand how crime works. I understand how criminal organizations use cryptocurrency to further their actions, to launder money and finance operations, everything like that. So I have a little bit, I'm not just a private sector or a small business perspective. I've seen both sides. I've seen the damage that crypto can do, and I've seen the advantages of fostering innovation in the crypto space as well. So I think he was happy to hear that, and hear that perspective
Were
in terms
you
of what needs to be done to like further the initiatives of the administration.
do you think that what do you think that you were able to achieve either with him or from him as you now go back to Cat Labs and continue to ramp and spread the word on what you're doing?
I think my main really goal was to raise awareness and to get heard, to get kind of a seat at the table. So when they do make policy decisions, they kind of have what I said in mind. And what I said, really, one of the main things that I was focusing on is the government holds petabytes of digital data with cryptocurrency assets that haven't been discovered, right? Because the agents, the analysts, they can't possibly spend days and hours and months and years scanning through all of that data. It's just infeasible. It's physically impossible. And not only is it the time constraint, but it's also the technical expertise that's necessary in order to actually know what to look for when you're looking through that digital data, and know what to do when you find it. So you're first of all need to be looking at, okay, am I looking for private keys, seed phrases? Where can those be found? Or am I looking for wallets or traces that a wallet was used by a target or something like that? Am I looking at open source intelligence? Like there's so many different things that requires a great deal of expertise, and there's really not a small percentage of government workers that actually have that expertise, right? And what I also emphasized is the return on investment on agents in historically that have been working cryptocurrency cases has been in the thousands of percent in terms of how much the government spends on their salary and their training and their benefits versus how much money they seize from criminal organizations, because they have taken the time to learn how to seize cryptocurrency, where to look for it, how to look for it. And they end up seizing millions, billions, sometimes billions of dollars, right? And the ROI is in the thousands of percents in terms of how much the government gets out of that particular agent, right? That's working those cases, that knows how to find cryptocurrency within digital data that they collect.
So let's start in reverse. We'll start with Cat Labs and then go into your time in as a special agent with DEA. Tell me, as I understand it, Cat Labs it's a very, very unique value proposition to what you said is you can go into petabytes worth of data that has been seized and help governments or private sector find the assets. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
How did you strike on that as the value prop as opposed to some of the others that are out there that we hear a lot more around TRM, Chainalysis, elliptic? Like, give me a little bit of put yourself on that map and where are you and why?
Yeah. So those companies you just listed are amazing companies, and they serve a very important purpose, which is on-chain analytics, which is tracing the assets through the blockchain. Now, I did crypto cases for 10 years, and I beta tested a lot of these tools when they first, when they were startups, when they first came out. And um, and they were great. I used all of them multiple times and in my cases, and they helped my cases. The one thing at the end, before I left the government, when crypto exploded into the mainstream, and so with it exploded the crime and the use of crypto in criminal organizations. We now had a situation where we had a handful of agents in probably the whole federal government that knew how to do crypto cases, but now every case became a crypto case. It doesn't matter. It wasn't just dark web anymore. It was all the cases: human trafficking, drug trafficking, terrorism. North Korea was, stealing, hacking into crypto exchanges and services and DeFi services to finance their operations. So it just very quickly became a very big part of illicit finance. And so what happened was a lot of the a lot of the agents that had been working crypto cases for many, many years, we were now getting like hundreds of cases on our lap just from other people that were like, oh, I think my target is using crypto. I don't really know what to do with it. Lily, can you help me? And so it was we were bottlenecks, and and it was extremely inefficient. And so one of the main pain points that I experienced personally in my cases is when I seize data, I have to manually look through that data to look for crypto. If I seize a phone, for example, from a target, and there's 50,000 photos in that phone, I have to manually, with my eyes, look at every single photo, because a photo can contain a private key, a seed phrase that's associated with millions or billions of dollars, right? The largest seizure that we've ever had in this country is $3.6 billion, and it was found inside a spreadsheet. It was inside a spreadsheet from a Google Drive that was seized from a target, right? So there's so much more where that came from. And the reason we found it is because the agent, whom I know very well, is an expert, right? He's been doing crypto cases for a long time. He knew exactly what he needs to be collecting. He knew he should be doing a search warrant of a Google Drive of his target. He knew where he should be looking. He knew what he should be looking for.
What
And
was
that's
the
how
case? Again, can we give him a plug?
yeah, Chris J is his name, his IRS CI agent, a very, very talented agent. We've worked together on several occasions, and we're really good colleagues as well when we were back,
Is he
in the
at
government.
TRM now?
He is, yes, he's at
Yeah.
TR.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I know
yeah,
the case. Yeah.
yeah, excellent agent. But like I said, he has the expertise. He knows what to do. He knows what to look for.
But he did it manually.
He did it manually. Yeah. I mean, if you look at there's a documentary that just came out about it. What is it, The Biggest Heist or something like that
Yeah.
on Netflix.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, and he talks about it. He's like, yeah, the Red Bulls and the coffee, and I was just
Yeah.
sitting
He
there,
geeked out.
and just like plugging away at the keyboard and looking at all the data and stuff, and looking, and he found those keys, and that's given that he knew what to look for and what to do with it when he finds it, right? Most people don't. Most of that data, they'll seize a phone, they'll seize a computer, it'll just go into the evidence log. Like a lot of times nobody even looks at it because there's such a huge backlog of digital data. And if you don't get to those private keys on time, they can move, that money can move. Your target probably has a copy of those keys, their sister, wife, whatever, has a copy of those keys. So the fact that you have it in your possession doesn't mean that you seized it, right? You have to actually find it and move it in order to seize it.
How'd you bridge from the no tech investigation to more tech? And I'm not sure if you're using AI. I presume you are. How did you get How did you go from your own knowledge and know-how to start figuring out, I got to build a better mousetrap here?
Yeah, well, we had amazing blockchain analytics tools, and there was more of them that were coming into the market, and they were all they had their own benefits. And this was the biggest bottleneck, is like I cannot go like I'm missing out on millions of dollars because I just physically cannot go through all that data, even having the knowledge. And so that's when I decided that we like something needs to happen, and we need to build something that can scale, and the best way to scale people is technology, right? And so that's what happened, and I collected all of the experts in this field, because it's not easy to be an expert in this field. It's not easy to be a crypto seizure expert, because you have to have not only an understanding of where crypto can be stored, where you can find traces of cryptocurrency within digital data that you collect in your investigations. You also have to understand digital forensics, right? There's all these different file types that you have to go through in different formats. They're nested. It's not an easy feat, and it's not an easy skill set to come by. And so I had to find the people generally in the government that have been focusing on crypto recovery from the forensic perspective, and understand file systems, and understand how to scour through all the different file types, and where to look, right? So if you have a 5 terabyte drive, for example, a computer, like where do you look for crypto in that drive? Where do you look for traces? And it's not just private keys, right? We're looking for traces of wallets. We're looking for communications. We're looking for domains or services that are used by the target if they're, emailing Binance or Coinbase or whatever it is. So all of these things are really important. Not only can you immediately seize assets if you find private key material, but you can also find really good leads for further investigation. You can do more search warrants, more subpoenas, et cetera, to find and trace those funds. So that was the biggest gap that I felt from doing 10 years of crypto investigations, and a lot of my colleagues as well, that we needed to address. And I think actually the recent executive order points this out, is that the agencies just have like crypto sitting in various places, and nobody knows how much crypto each agency owns. And not only do they not know how much they've already seized, in terms of like having a centralized place for the government to understand how much the government actually owns, but also they don't even know how much they haven't seized. They don't even know how much is just sitting in their evidence lockers, just because they don't have a scalable way of looking through that data to find assets. So there's billions of dollars, I am guaranteed, just sitting in evidence lockers right now, just because that data hasn't been scanned properly. So, and I think that's a huge opportunity for us to fill that need.
So how did you, in addition to using the technology to search for the digital assets smarter, what was your bridge then from the government sector into private sector?
I just left. I
Well,
just
it wasn't just you. You've got a pretty powerhouse group of former law enforcement intelligence officers, as I understand it.
Yeah, for primarily former law enforcement, and then we also have some people from the DoD as well, and a lot of very smart technologists, engineers, computer scientists working on this, forensic experts. So yeah, I mean, I had to sell it, right? I had to sell it to these people. I had to leave and say, look, first of all, I had to raise money, and then I had to recruit the best of the best to be able to build this. And so
And
that
you
has to be kind of a combination of, I would say, somebody that has done crypto cases, that understands the customer, because that's the most important thing. You have to understand the customer. You can't just like build something in the vacuum and be like, here, do you want to use this? No, you have to understand the customer very well. And so it has to be a combination of that, a combination of digital forensic experience, crypto recovery experience, and of course, engineering. Like the engineering power has to be really on point to be able to build this.
you've raised just under 10 million.
Yep.
Is that fair? And then, using that Obviously, that's helps you with recruiting. You talk about the customer, and as I understand it, your primary initial focus was government as the customer, right?
Yep.
Tell me about that. You get the people, you get the money, you know who the target customer is. How does a startup go into focusing on the government? And it reminded me your story of what Palantir was doing early-ish on, being able to go to them and say, hey, look, we've got some really good, powerful computing data analytics. Let's focus on the government and figure out the private sector later. Tell me
Yeah.
about that didn't seem like it's a strategy. It was just a, yeah, that's where the problem is. Fair.
Yeah.
But how'd you
Yeah.
penetrate that? How'd you get there?
So it's yeah, that's where the biggest need is. And I understand the need, and the people on my team understand the need. We understand the customer, we understand the government agencies and how they operate. And so I think we could speak to the customer. We could articulate what our tool is doing and why it's going to help them. It was also a combination of, when you're speaking to an agency that has done a lot of crypto cases, they're like, yes, we need this. Like, we
But
understand.
they knew you and your team, right?
Yeah, yes, a lot of times they knew me. I mean, sometimes we'll be talking to someone from an agency that maybe they didn't know me personally, but they knew of me,
Sure.
because there wasn't a lot of us that were doing these kinds of cases back in the day. So so word gets around. So yeah, a lot of them knew me. A lot of them didn't personally know me, but heard of me, or a lot of them have never heard my name ever before. So, but I think the
Well,
biggest thing is having, so it's not just selling the product, right? It's communicating the need. And sometimes with some customers, you don't have to communicate the need. They already know. Like, the moment you just open your mouth and say, hey, you probably have terabytes of data sitting in your evidence lockers right now. Like, did you go through all of that to scan for crypto? And they're like, oh my God, yes. Like, like, they understand. They understand immediately because they've done it so many times, and they understand how much of a pain point that is. And then some customers, maybe they haven't done a lot of the crypto cases before. A lot of the state and local, for example, police departments, they haven't done a lot of crypto cases historically, and they're just starting to see them come through within their investigations. And so,
how did you convert? How did you the government, typically the federal government, how did you convert them to actual clients or customers, given a bureaucracy, any procurement process? What was that experience like?
it's like pushing a boulder up a mountain. So,
Okay, so it's no
yeah,
different. Just because it's a highly needed, very niche expertise, even though there's a potential pot of gold at the end of the, crypto petabyte, haystack,
yep.
you still had to go through it just like everyone else.
The bureaucracy is real. It is so palpable. And the very big challenge is, even when your customer is bought in, even when your customer says, yeah, we really need this, there's so many extra steps that need to happen for them to actually get the product in their hands. And a lot of it is the contracting, and where are we going to get the money, because there's like the funding comes from, this section has the money. Do we talk to this section or that section? Especially in like the big federal agencies, they have all of these different sections, and they all have their own pots of money. And then figuring out, okay, who's the decision maker? We know that the field needs this, and we had one agency where we've had multiple field divisions in that agency. It's a large agency that had a lot of offices all across the country. And so we had multiple offices all across the country actually submit funding requests for our product to headquarters. And then the bureaucracy of it, just like, sometimes it killed it. It didn't. Not a lot of things moved, and I think it's changing a lot now with what's happening with the current administration. Not yet, because a lot of right now we're kind of in chaos. Everybody is in disarray. But I think the goal here is to remove a lot of those blockers, a lot of that bureaucracy.
Explain the chaos and disarray from your perspective, and then I'll give you mine.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, funding is frozen. Everybody is kind of a lot of the agencies are afraid to even spend money right now. Then you also have people just being afraid for their jobs. Like, am I gonna get fired? Like nobody, like a lot of people are like, I don't care about buying a tool to help me do my cases. Like, am I gonna get fired? And I think once that dust settles and we get to more of a stable place after this initial shakeup, I think it's gonna be a lot less challenging in that regard. But yeah,
So
I mean,
let me
you
ask,
can
all right, so
understand it. I mean, it's the human element, right? Everybody, like it's very unstable right now. Nobody knows what Doge is gonna do, what the president is gonna do, really. So
so without repeating, I'm basically in your ballpark of that's the chaos that I understand. I was just at the American Bar Association's white collar uh, conference down in Miami, and this is not a thing of local U.S. lawyers, international lawyers, criminal prosecutors, uh, government representatives. Almost all of our U.S. federal government prosecutors and investigators, they did not come, even though they were invited and they were on the agenda. I believe that the word from their executives was you're not going anywhere. You're not speaking on anything just yet. And so it was this chaotic. Usually you go to these seminars and you feel like what's true north as we move through the next 18 months. And this is the first time that I've been around so many professionals and no one knew what was going on. But let's focus on maybe the executive order. Let's focus on, number one, we know that this is a very pro digital assets administration. Is it a pro cybersecurity administration?
well, look, I think at least indirectly, I'm not really sure in terms of traditional cybersecurity. I haven't seen a lot of, or I haven't been paying attention to a lot of the directives coming from this administration regarding strengthening traditional cybersecurity. However, by transitive property, if you foster innovation in the crypto space, you are going to be in furtherance of cybersecurity innovation
Yes.
and protecting national security. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Is anyone going to get that in the government? Are they going to? For me, it really is that 1 + 1 = 2, because you said something in a prior interview that I thought was fabulous, where you almost took a pause on the digital asset side and you looked at it from a computer science side, where you said the reason why we need to do cryptocurrencies, digital assets, and understand blockchain technologies is, yeah, there's the market economics of it, but there's also the cyber aspect. Go further with that, please. I heard that. I was like, I cannot wait to talk to you, because I think it's not just compelling, but I think it's imperative that we pull that thread nationally.
Yeah. So crypto in itself, the underlying technology is cryptography, and cryptography is the backbone of cybersecurity. That's encryption, is the backbone of encryption. And so what we the reason that I say that fostering innovation in the crypto space is going to be in furtherance of our cybersecurity, national security interests is fostering innovation in the field of cryptography will do that. The problem with the field of cryptography is it's very hard to really truly innovate in that field, because a lot of the research and a lot of the innovation, it kind of is born and dies in academia. There's, they write research papers and they come up with these, mathematical formulas in cryptography. And the problem with it is it's going to be too late if we are under attack by a quantum computer from a foreign government, and all we have is some academic papers that say theoretically we could do this to prevent, to have quantum resistant encryption, right? Like we can't do, like we have to develop these technologies and make them scalable and productize them now. We can't wait. We have to do that now. And the way that we do that is by fostering innovation in the cryptography space and the cryptocurrency space, because it's profit driven, is the biggest motivator for the commercial sector to actually take that stuff from academia and productize it and commercialize it and scale it and actually turn it into usable tools. And one of the great examples would be like multi-party computation, right? That came from academia, and now it's being used all over the crypto space to secure, cryptocurrency wallets and make sure that, transactions are secure. And as an infrastructure for financial transactions in the crypto space. And so that technology would have died in academia if we didn't have a use case for it in crypto. Same thing with zero knowledge proofs. Now, the technology we're working with at Cat Labs is fully homomorphic encryption. That technology would die if we didn't have a way to, profit from it, right? Because if you don't have a way to profit from it, a lot of times that research doesn't go on, right? Because humans are just profit
I've
driven.
talked about it. I think I
Yeah.
do. I've heard about it takes a lot of power. It's slow right now, but with the advent or progression of quantum computing, homomorphic encryption, where, as I understand it, you're able to keep information encrypted while being able to use it for certain
Yeah.
for very certain questions and answers. And so it's the first time you can actually use data while encrypted. Usually we've talked about encryption in transit,
Mhm.
encryption in storage or at rest. The big outlier has been encryption as we use it. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah. So fully homomorphic encryption is quantum resistant, which is one of the most important things about it. Lattice based, and it's also able to it has a threshold quality that can be implemented, which allows you to basically shard information in uh, or shard data. So you can encrypt and decrypt data that's been sharded instead of just all in one place. So that's really useful.
What is sharding?
Sharding or sharing, sharding. Yeah, so you break it up, you break a piece of data that you're trying to protect into
Mhm.
multiple pieces, right? And you can store it in different in different locations, in physical servers or whatever. You can store it in different ways, but it's a useful tool to have. So fully homomorphic encryption is great because not only is it quantum resistant, but also it allows you to have kind of a multi-party encryption and decryption functionality. So that's a really useful thing to have for practicality. Now, it's also very impractical currently. There's even vulnerabilities that it has. There's a malleability, a vulnerability with fully homomorphic encryption that can be mitigated with some integration with zero knowledge proofs and some of the other stuff that we're actually working on right now to mitigate some of the malleability of fully homomorphic encryption. And also computational complexity. It's complex. And if you try to scale homomorphic operations, where, like you said, you can compute on encrypted data without having to decrypt it, it can become very computationally intensive. And so a lot of the research that needs to happen in the space is how to mitigate some of these challenges with fully homomorphic encryption so we can commercialize it and we can productize it and we can make tools out of it so that when that quantum computer comes and like breaks all encryption, we're not going to be sitting there with our pants down.
Right.
So
Right.
that's it. And it's like this in a lot of different, like it's like this in the medical field, right? Like you can have a plant in the Amazon that cures cancer, but nobody studies it, nobody researches it, because there's no money in it, because I can't patent a plant. I can't
Right.
patent something. So that's why commercialization and innovation in the space of cryptography is so important, and crypto is our gateway to that innovation because
I,
it's so profit driven, and because there's so much research happening in the crypto space. Because it's so profit driven, it allows us to actually commercialize very important cryptographic protocols and
you
tools.
know, I recall um, you were on a panel years ago, and you seemed very pessimistic against digital assets in its commercial use, and that it was really only being used by criminals and for um, illegal means. It seems you've switched. It,
I haven't. I
no, you
haven't switched.
haven't. Oh,
No, no.
interesting.
So I know the
Do
panel.
you know what
I,
panel I'm talking about?
I do. It was in Vegas. It was the chain exchange panel I was on with Paul Krugman and
Yes.
a couple other people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally remember that. So what I was saying on that panel is, and
By
this,
the way, I you were very pragmatic.
yeah,
You were not in a pragmatic group setting. If you
yes,
recall, everyone who was, as Gensler used to say, the maximalists, like
yeah.
they were getting like all the applause, and like every time you said something, you could hear like the room get like super quiet.
I thought I was gonna have like eggs thrown at my face at some point. I don't know. But it was also during like the crypto bull market,
100%.
and so
Absolutely.
everybody was like drunk on money and to the moon and all that
You
stuff.
stuck to your guns.
Yeah, I stuck to my guns because that's we need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, there was somebody on that panel that ended up running away with people's money. I don't know if you know that.
I 100% know that.
There you go. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
And
and she was like,
that
yeah,
person,
to the
that
moon, crypto's amazing, and we're doing all these great things. And then she took all the investors'
that
money and ran
person got
away and
all of the
disappeared.
applause.
And all the applause, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
And in a maybe it was like a coincidental visual, but you were literally on one seat and she was 5 or 6 seats on the other side. Like you were bookends, like
yeah.
totally.
You should have seen the backstage of that of my conversation with her. It was even better.
How
Um,
so? I mean,
no, it was just, she was peddling all that, scammy stuff, and
she was very good.
she was very good.
Very good.
Yeah, very articulate, very convincing, and I just wasn't buying it because I saw the bad, and I know the good. I'm pretty good at figuring out, okay, like, let's take away the noise. The noise is all the ICOs and the scams and everybody like saying, yeah, now I have a crypto project because I can just take investors' money and run away with it, which is exactly what most people did, including her. And but I just stuck to the basics. The basics are, and my point during that panel was the first real true use case for cryptocurrency was criminal activity. It was where a group of people actually came together and utilized it for some purpose other than
Buying a pizza.
trading, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, other than speculation, right? So
Right.
like they act, so the first use case was really the dark web.
Yeah.
It allowed you, it allowed criminals to be able to sell things online without being detected, without a financial intermediary that can't, that can be subpoenaed.
Uh, this is where I want to go, and then we'll talk about Bybit. Is I think I told you when we were kind of leading up to this, I spent an hour with an information security expert a few months ago on the dark and deep webs. We were moving around. We filmed it. We put it on the podcast, and we saw the Amazon like websites. Did you want a prostitute? Did you want an assassin? Did you want child pornography? You couldn't figure out if it was honeypots or anything being run by FBI. And like I had this question of like, what the hell? Like, why it what is law enforcement doing to kind of police this beat? And then you obviously were part of if not one of the largest takedowns of a dark net marketplace. Can we talk about that for a little bit? I know you've
Sure.
talked about it a lot, but I do think, because I do use this for, for educational as well as entertainment purposes, to kind of close that chapter on just how crazy that side of the internet is, and what you and a pretty skilled team across at least 7 agencies was able to do. Um, Give us a little bit about that, please.
So I've been before before taking down Hydra, or even investigating Hydra, I've been investigating dark web markets for many years. And they all share similarities in the way that they're operated. You know, they usually have an administrator, a few senior moderators, they'll have an escrow service, they'll have like a Bitcoin wallet that you can send money to. You know, you buy your Bitcoin somewhere else and send it to the market. So they, they kind of like a have a copy paste kind of structure. And then they'll have like, the listings where you can go and search, create an account with the dark web, just, but usually by going on Tor. Then they'll have the listings. You can go and find whatever drug of choice that you want. You know, it'll tell you how much it costs in Bitcoin. It'll tell you the type of shipping that's available. It'll tell you what's in stock, what else is in stock for that vendor. You can click on the vendor and see what else they're selling. You can see their PGP key, which is used to encrypt communication on the dark web market. So it's a pretty kind of cookie cutter system where most of these dark web markets kind of operate in a very similar way.
Because I haven't heard that phrase before, what's an EGP key?
Oh, PGP. So
PGP?
yeah, it stands for pretty good privacy. It's
Oh, okay. I know PGP. Okay.
yeah, it's like an communication encryption framework that's used. And so most of the vendors will have their public PGP key listed on on their profile so that you can send them a message that they
Got
can
it.
decrypt with their private key.
And so they would do that. They could do it via WhatsApp. They could do it via Signal, something like that.
So no, there's a messaging system on the market itself. So
Okay.
you can message the vendor directly about something, and you can also message the vendor um, in the messaging system that's connected to the order that you're trying to
Yeah.
place.
Okay.
So like, if you, let's say I order, if somebody wants to order cocaine, there's a cocaine listing on the on the dark web market. They'll generally go through the buying process, click through the buying process, and then at the end they'll have to send their address, so that the vendor knows where to send drugs. And so at that point, usually they'll encrypt their address with a PGP key. And so
Right.
they'll use the vendor's PGP key, public PGP key, to encrypt that message with the address.
And then you had talked about, no one just sends over, no one does, cash first. It's always like an escrow service. The marketplace, even though it's an illegal marketplace, there's like this honor amongst thieves of, yeah, this is where you can go do your business. This is where you can go do your illegitimate business legitimately.
Yeah. So because it has a review system, and if you scam a bunch of people, you get bad reviews. So a lot of the markets had rules about whether you can disable the escrow portion of your transaction. If you're a vendor that has been around for a while, you have thousands of reviews, you have 5-star reviews, everything is hunky-dory, then a lot of times the market will allow you to what's called finalize early. So like it would be called an FE, finalize early transaction. So that would bypass the escrow service. Usually that wouldn't be available to vendors that just started out. So vendors that just started out generally would have to go through the escrow service to protect the buyers. So if I get, and usually the escrow, the way that it works is you buy, the buyer would place the order, and then the Bitcoin would go into an escrow account before it goes to the vendor. And so when the buyer gets the drugs, then they can release the escrow early, or the escrow gets automatically released within usually about 2 weeks. Different markets have different periods, but usually within 2 weeks, the escrow will be automatically released to the vendor if the buyer doesn't release it earlier. And
Is
so
that, I mean, that was for all intents and purposes what Hydra was, Hydra being the name of that marketplace.
Hydra was like a completely different market. Like the reason that I said all the other markets that I've been investigating are all like kind of cookie cutter. You kind of know what to do. It's like, okay, boring. Okay, like, oh, here we go again, same thing every day. Hydra was very, very different. Hydra was so sophisticated in some ways and not very in other ways. But in some ways, it was so sophisticated as a business. Not only did they have just like a platform for you to buy and sell drugs for vendors and buyers. And then you have like the administrators and moderators that would like moderate disputes between vendors and buyers. They had all kinds of other stuff. They had their own internal money laundering service. They had their own internal it was a self-contained system where you didn't have to buy Bitcoin from somewhere else. You could buy it on the market itself. So it was, and you can sell it back. You can sell it back for fiat currency. After, like let's say you do a transaction and you have some Bitcoin left, and then you can sell it back on the market. You never have to leave the market for any reason. And so that was the first. The other markets didn't really have that.
On the flip side, I I'm not sure if you laughed, but in one interview you were like, you were, I'll use a word that I used recently. Not you, you were almost like gobsmacked that you were like, wait a minute, they're this transparent in what they're doing. Like it wasn't a sophisticated takedown for you as I understood it.
Oh yeah. So Hydra itself was very sophisticated.
Uh-huh.
So besides, the self-contained money laundering services and the exchange, the fiat, the crypto exchange, they had things like addiction support. They had chemists that would test your drugs to see if they're pure. It was, and then also another difference was that it was a coordinate drop system. Um, so instead of shipping the drugs, usually they would drop the drugs in some place and then give you the coordinates, and then you would go and pick them up. So there'd be like, and I have some, I know some people in Russia that live in Russia who would say that the drugs would be like literally buried in their backyard. Like there'd be drug dealers burying drugs in somebody's backyard, and then there'd be junkies coming to their backyard and trying to get the drugs. It was like all over the place. Anyway, so it was a really crazy, sophisticated market. However, they didn't do a good job hiding their servers, and they didn't do a good job hiding themselves. Like the administrator was really easy to identify compared to the other, because I've been working so many dark web cases, and it's like the biggest pain in the butt because they're all encrypted. They're all sophisticated, and they're all, one of them even threw me red herrings every 5 seconds. They would throw me on the wrong, investigative path, and then it would be really annoying. For this case, the reason I say that it was kind of easy is because I was expecting it to be hard, and it ended up being, because of how sophisticated the market itself was, how big it was, how long it's been running for. But it was fairly easy to find the servers, and it was fairly easy to find the administrators compared
And
to
this
the
was
other.
operating out of Russia.
So the majority of the, I guess, co-conspirators in the leadership team were Russia and Ukraine. And then the servers were in Germany.
And tell me a little bit about when you read the press release, it was a litany of U.S. I think almost all federal agencies. Maybe there were some state agencies, but I think it was federal. You know, why? And when you think about efficiency, if we think about Doge, and now and I do want to get to being more efficient as we focus on transnational crime, hopefully more online than just what's crossing our physical borders. There were 7 or 8 different agencies that were involved in that, like
Yeah.
why. And if it was just the nature of just everyone needed a piece of that pie because it was part of their remit, fine. But tell me a little bit about that, and then we can move into maybe kind of where we're going in the Trump administration.
Well, it's by design, and that's one of the reasons I um decided from the very beginning when I first started looking into dark web and crypto that I couldn't just do it at DEA by myself. I had to use the resources and the skill sets available at other agencies to be able to truly make a difference and take down a multinational, multifaceted criminal organization. And to give you an example, IRS criminal investigation, that agency is insanely good at tracing the money. You will not find better money tracers and money laundering investigators in any other agency. So I had to have IRSCI on the case, or on all of my cases. I had them on all my cases, including Hydra. And as a matter of fact, we, myself and IRSCI, we were running disparate cases that we ended up joining our cases, and then running, one single case.
Jim Lee, the former chief, he went over to Chainalysis.
He did, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was. I've seen him. I was impressed because you wouldn't think IRS would be doing digital as much as they are, and it
Oh
is
yeah.
incredible.
They're just it because it's not just tracing crypto on the blockchain. You also have to connect the dots with the traditional financial system because most of the criminals will then still turn their crypto into fiat. And the IRS agents, a lot of them have accounting backgrounds. A lot of them are really exceptional financial investigators. And you just don't find that in any other agency, really. I mean, like at scale, like most of those agents are exceptional financial investigators. Yeah, we'll have some people, let's say at HSI and DEA, that could do, really good financial investigations. But IRS is just very laser focused and really good at that. So when it comes to the financial investigation itself, tracing the money, like I wouldn't do a case without involving IRSCI. There's no reason because like it's not going to be a good case.
So from kind of like as you saw it beginning to end, how long did the Hydra investigation take? And did you see that everyone kind of got on the same page on, hey, we know what the goal is, particularly as it got clearer as to who the actors were? How long did that take?
So I guess from when we officially started the case till we took it down, it was maybe a couple of years. Um, but I it was really difficult to find a prosecutor for this case because first of all, if you have someone in Russia and your target is in Russia, there's no extradition. You can't get them and extradite them to the US, right? So a lot of a lot of prosecutors were just like, I don't know if I want to deal with this case. And then also it was more like Hydra was more of a problem in the Eastern Bloc countries. And it has just started being used by all kinds of criminals, including in the US, to launder money because it had such a beautiful, awesome money laundering infrastructure that they've built, like internal money laundering infrastructure. And so it has become relevant to the US, but it wasn't so obvious. And so you kind of had to build that case about like, okay, why is this even relevant to the US? So it took, I think maybe I started looking into it maybe 4 years prior to the takedown. I was kind of talking to the Russians who were asking, we had a liaison in Moscow, and they were asking us for some intel. And I've worked with the Russians before, and a lot of a lot of them are corrupt in terms of the cops. And so I'm always hesitant sharing information with the Russians. And so, it was kind of like that where I was, curious about Hydra. I was looking into it. It was difficult to find a prosecutor. But then we found a prosecutor, so that there was an IRS case that was out of San Francisco. Actually, I don't know if you know Tigran Gambarian. He was just he was just released from a Nigerian prison, which is
Sure,
a crazy
sure.
story. Yeah, so he was a former IRS agent, and at the time we worked together. And he called me, and he knew that I was working the Hydra case, but I had trouble finding a prosecutor. And so he called me and he's like, hey, we may have some lead. Claudia Quiroz, she was in San Francisco and she agreed to take the case, which was awesome, you know? And so I asked him, I was like, yeah, I'd love to continue working the case, but like, I can't get a prosecutor to take it. And he's like, I have a prosecutor, she'll take it. And so I was like, okay, let's go, let's do this. So we kind of joined our cases from then on. And
What are some better practices that you would think around asset protection um, for digital assets?
so I mentioned before, like NPC technology. I'd love to see that continuing to develop, and that goes a long way in terms of providing a secure kind of transaction infrastructure for large scale digital asset management. There's a lot of vulnerabilities in terms of like private key hygiene. So I think everybody who's managing funds for someone else or for yourself, if you're a high net worth individual, definitely I recommend the CSSC training, cybersecurity training for digital assets. It teaches you all of the different ways in which your crypto can be stolen and how to protect your assets if you're a digital asset custodian or even a digital asset technology provider like a wallet, for example, or technical infrastructure provider. So private key hygiene, one of the biggest things. A lot of the transactions nowadays revolve around smart contracts, right? And so a lot of the smart contract vulnerabilities that are out there that are being exploited is a big thing. So if you're using smart contracts, or if you're using assets and DeFi that rely on the use of smart contracts, there's always going to be that kind of risk that there may be a vulnerability in the smart contract that can allow a hacker to steal the money. And so there's a lot of that. I believe the Bybit hack, from what I've read, and I didn't go super deep into it, but I believe the hacker got access to the AWS infrastructure where Safe Wallet, I think Safe Wallet is what was used by Bybit.
Right.
So where Safe Wallet had like their multi-sig system for transaction signing. And so when the transaction was signed, the hacker was able to like change the address for the hacker's address instead of uh, the actual destination address. So yeah, they changed the destination address essentially during the transaction signing. And I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it was like a smart contract exploit of some sort. But they did gain access to the AWS
Right.
of that wallet. So yeah,
So private key
serious threat.
hygiene,
Private
private
key
key
hygiene,
hygiene, I get that.
disaster
Information
recovery.
information security around your smart contracts, almost, you and I agree with you around the training of, cybersecurity, um, risk assessments, pen tests, black, red hat, purple testing of the smart contracts. I agree. Anything else that users or even just consumers in digital assets should be thinking about, or the providers?
Well, I think that one of the biggest things is phishing. Social engineering is one of the biggest things that attackers use to gain access. But private key hygiene is, one of the biggest things, I think. And what we're working on at Cat Labs too is fully homomorphically encrypted disaster recovery system. So for cryptocurrency private keys. So basically it allows you to store private keys in untrusted environments, or in a disaster recovery situation. And so even if like your cloud gets hacked, your key is still safe, right?
What are the next 12 to 18 months look for you as you are now in the administration? You now have, I think, a pretty credible toehold into the government customer sector as you're looking at the private sector. What's your 12 to 18-month strategic plan?
Servicing the government is still um, one of our biggest goals, because of especially because of the executive order, and there's a lot of work to be done in helping the government find, identify, and seize crypto assets and manage them properly. And so we're definitely going to still go full force on that. And we're planning on going to hit the market more on the private sector side. We have some private sector customers, but we haven't directly targeted that market segment yet, with any level of intensity. So they're just kind of coming to us. But definitely like consulting firms, law firms that deal in civil cases, civil asset recovery cases. So this can be your bankruptcy, restructuring, estate disputes, probate, that kind of stuff. That could use a scalable asset recovery system. So yeah, that's where we're gonna go.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, I appreciate it very much. I think what you're doing is fantastic, not just on the digital asset space, but as I told you, this is our season around cybersecurity, and I love being able to bring it all together. Um, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. If you like this episode, please like, please share. You can also subscribe to Opinions My Own on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Thank you for listening.